to the U.S. Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs, applicant orientation for 84.325K, interdisciplinary preparation for personnel serving children with disabilities who have high-intensity needs. My name is Sun Young An, and I'm the competition manager for Focus Area A, Early Childhood.
And I'm Letitia Putney, competition manager for Focus Area B, School Age and Minority Serving Institutions. The information that we are about to present has been summarized due to the logistics of the webinar and is for guidance only. Please read the entire notice inviting applications, the instructions, and all other related statutes, regulations, and references. Also, for additional information related to submitting an application, please review the recorded webinar titled Applying for the Office of Special Education Programs Discretionary Grants. Okay, so again, the purpose of the interdisciplinary preparation and special education, early intervention, and related services for personnel serving children with disabilities who have high intensity needs priority is to increase the number and improve the quality of personnel who are fully credentialed to serve children, including infants, toddlers, and youth with disabilities who have high intensity needs, especially in areas of chronic personnel shortages.
The 325K priority for fiscal year 2021 is funded at $8 million. From the $8 million, we anticipate funding 32 total awards across Focus Area A, Early Childhood, and Focus Area B, School Age. Eligible applicants for this competition are institutions of higher education with degree programs at the master's, education specialist, or clinical doctorate level, and private nonprofits that prepare personnel at the master's, education specialist, or clinical doctorate level. Educational interpreter programs are not required to submit an interdisciplinary application. However, they are encouraged to do so. In addition, education interpreter programs can submit an application at the bachelor's level. Applicants may use up to the first 12 months of the performance period and up to $100,000 of the first budget period for planning. Next slide.
And now we're going to discuss scholars. A scholar is a student who is enrolled in a graduate degree program that leads to certification, licensure, or an endorsement to serve IDEA-eligible children with disabilities. Scholars come from 2 or more graduate degree programs, such as special education and a related service area, or early intervention and a related service area, or 2 or more related service areas. Scholars are expected to complete shared coursework, group assignments, and coordinated field experiences. Lastly, scholars must be able to fulfill service obligation requirements. And you're able to see the service obligation requirements at the link on this slide.
The application package contains the Dear Applicant letter, the notice inviting applications, the Federal Register notice, and the grants.gov system submission procedures and tips for applicants, the priority description and selection criteria, general information, and required forms. And you can see the required forms on the link listed on the PowerPoint slide. Next slide, please. The Federal Register notice contains the deadline. The deadline for this year is June 22nd at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. The requirements in this priority are the programmatic requirements, the assurances, and the focus areas. Next slide. A 325K application is funded up to $250,000 per year for 5 years. Over 5 years, 65% of or more of the award must be used for scholar support. Applicants proposing to use year one for program development must ensure that 65% of the total award minus funds allocated for program development will be used for scholar support. Next slide.
All applications will be reviewed using the following 4 selection criteria and point system. Significance of the project, 10 points. Quality of project services, 45 points. Quality of project evaluation, 25 points. And quality of personnel, project personnel, management plan, and resources, 20 points, for a total of 100 points. In addition to these 4 areas, there are 2 competitive preference priorities in this competition. The first competitive preference priority is for 0 or 3 points for a novice applicant. A novice applicant is one that has not been funded or included through membership in a group application 5 years before the deadline date for submission of applications under the 325K program, or FY 2016 to FY 2020. Competitive preference priority 2 is for 0 or 2 points. This is for projects that are designed to intentionally recruit, prepare, and support non-traditional scholars, which includes individuals who are career switchers, paraeducators, former members of the military, those returning to the workforce, or those returning from the Peace Corps, and who hold a bachelor's degree in an area other than education or a related service. To obtain their degree in early intervention, special education, or related services.
Now I will provide a brief overview of each section of the selection criteria. Significance of the project is for 0 to 10 points. In this section, the Secretary considers the 2 following factors: the extent to which the proposed project will prepare personnel for fields that have demonstrated shortages, and the magnitude of the outcomes likely to be attained by the proposed project, especially in the areas of teaching and child development. Next slide. The quality of project services houses the bulk of the potential points at 0 to 45 with 5 subfactors. And you can read the 5 subfactors on the slide. Next slide. Quality of project evaluation is for 0 to 25 points with 4 subfactors. Again, you can read the subfactors on the slide. And finally, the quality of project personnel management plan and resources selection section is for 0 to 20 points with 6 subfactors. Please review each section carefully to ensure that you are addressing each subfactor in its entirety. Next slide. To summarize, there is a total of 100 points that are possible, and they are divided between the 4 areas I described. Plus, there are the competitive preference points Letitia talked about that you can receive for a novice applicant or for your plan to recruit, prepare, and support non-traditional scholars. And this was a quick overview of the notice inviting applications. Now we will open it up for your questions. So you may type in your question in the questions box, or you can raise your hand.
Hi, so we don't have any hands raised yet, but we have some questions in the questions box. So this is from Shannon Turner. Your slide said up to $250,000 a year for up to 5 years. Can you clarify whether it was supposed to be $250,000 total, not or per year?
It is supposed to be $250,000 per year for a total of $1.25 million over the 5 years.
Great, thank you. The next question is from Deborah Volts. Does competitive preference priority 1 include all or any 325K competitions?
Could you clarify the question, Deborah, if you can? It's any 3 to 5K project in the last 5 fiscal years. You should have not been a member of a grant project, or you were the prime on the 3 to 5K project within the last 5 fiscal years.
And that's 325K, does not include 325D, 325P, or 325L.
Great, I'll let you know if Deborah, Deborah said thank you, so I think that answers the question that they were asking.
Right.
Next is from Kelsey Mandak. Is the 8 million over 32 awards given per year or over 5 years?
That the 8 million is for the full 32 awards for this year. Every year that number could possibly change because we go through our budget office and it depends on the allocation that we receive from Congress.
Great, thank you. Next is from Kristen Murphy. In terms of novice applicants, is this at the institution level, for example, if an award has been given to a specific school, or is it personnel level?
It's the institution level because the applicant is an institution.
Great. Next is from Brianna Bronstein. You mentioned something regarding autism specific information in the very beginning of the presentation. Can you repeat this?
I don't recall us mentioning anything about autism.
I cannot recall that either.
All right. The next question comes from Fabiana. Do we need to meet the 65% in scholar support every year, or is it enough to demonstrate that 65% is met overall in the 5 years?
65% requirement is the whole project, and also if you're planning to have a planning year in the first year of the project, the funds allocated for planning, the total funds minus the funds allocated for planning year, 65% of that amount should go to scholar support.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Sean Huizinga. In the first year for development is the first year for development included in the 5 years? Or do you get 1 year to develop and 5 years after?
No, the 1 year planning period is included in the 5 years. So you have 1 year to develop, 4 years to complete the program.
Great, thank you. The next question is from Toby Long. If year 1 budget is less than $250,000, does that mean budget year 2 to 5 could be more than $250,000?
No, each year the budget maximum is $250,000, whether you use $1 in the first year or $249,000. The next budget will only be $250,000 max per year.
Great. Next question is from Maureen Russell. Please clarify if scholars can work as graduate assistants if they are receiving support from this grant.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Sorry. Maureen Russell asks you to clarify if scholars can work as graduate assistants if they are receiving support from this grant.
So it can be case by case how the grantee uses the scholar support. There are cases where universities provide graduate research assistantship. But the point of the NIA requirement is that the scholars do not have to be required to work to receive the funding.
Great. Now, I think the next question is pretty related, but I'll ask it just in case you want to add anything else. But Brianna Bronstein asks, are postdoctoral research associates able to apply?
No.
Okay. Next question is from Carolyn Fothery. Are any points given for cost sharing by the applicant?
No, there is no cost sharing or cost match. There's no cost match requirement this year, and there are no competitive preference points being given for cost sharing.
Yeah, that's a big change from our last year's 3 to 5K program. And I hope that's a good news to many of you.
Right.
Great, thank you. Next is from Jennifer Charnay. Is there a cap on the IDC rate?
Yes, it's 8%.
Great. And next is from Marlene Burns. Will you please define scholar support? What all does scholar support encompass?
Scholar support could include stipends, also tuition support, health insurance, books and conference attending. And there may be some other items, but I cannot remember those. But those type of support that the support that goes directly to scholars.
Great, thanks. I see Shannon Dermer's hand is raised. I'm going to go ahead and ask her to unmute. Oh, and okay, her hand went back down, so I think her question was answered. So next, we have a question from Elizabeth Talbot. Do we need to provide a logic model?
Yes, most projects provide a logic model. In the NIA, I cannot remember if it was a requirement, but logic model is, you're encouraged to provide logic model.
Great. Next question is from Amy Peters. Is this RFP designed primarily for higher ed institutions, or are there others for whom it would make sense to apply?
No, this is specifically for institutions of higher education, and the private nonprofit organizations that it's referring to are affiliated with institutions of higher education that prepare special education teachers or related services personnel.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Perla Fabiana. Is the competitive priority of actively recruiting non-traditional students demonstrated by providing the actual recruitment plan?
Yes. And how that recruitment plan will be implemented.
Thank you. Perla actually wanted to add to that, or to had another question, or just wanted to add to that. Just to clarify my previous 65% support question, assuming there is no year one development, would it be acceptable to have a year where support is short of 65% as long as it can be demonstrated that the requirement is met overall?
Yes.
Great. Next question is from Sean Huizinga. If awarded, when does the grant funding period start?
So we're expecting that we would be able to make the awards probably in September. So if that's the case, the start date would be either October, first date of October. That's what we are anticipating as of now. So the first budget would be October 1st, if that's the case, until the end of September next year.
Great, thank you. And we have a hand raised from Chandra Cordova. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute. Great, you should be unmuted.
Yeah, my question was, I was trying to, you were kind of going through these, the slides really quickly, but there was something on that, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think it was about the 4th or the 5th slide. I was trying to get the websites, the little thing you put down in, and I was going to ask what you guys had in the, I'm looking in the chat. Was that the same ones that was listed in the slides?
I wonder if you're talking about the service obligation for scholars. There were 2 links in the PowerPoint. One was about the service obligation requirement, and the other was about the first-time applicant applying for OSAP.
Yes, and that's the one I wanted, the first-time applicant. I was trying to find out how to apply, what are the logistics, but I looked in the chat and I was seeing these links, and I was wondering if that was the same links to finding out, you know, how to do it for your first time.
Yes. Okay. I'm looking at the chat now, and yes, those are the same links.
So these are the same links that was in the slide. Okay, cool.
Correct.
All right, good. Thank you. And just one last thing, even if it's your first time, if you are certified as a SPED teacher and you're working as a teacher, is this something that I would be able to apply for in my position as a teacher?
No, these grants are given to institutions of higher education, or when we say private nonprofit organizations, it could be something like the Health Sciences Center, Vanderbilt University Health Sciences Center. They're affiliated with the college or university, and the program has to result in a master's education specialist or clinical doctorate degree.
Okay, yeah, so I have those. So we have a nonprofit organization. Do we have to be affiliated with a higher education organization as well?
Yes, and you have to be training individuals to become those things.
So I could be in the wrong link. Okay, so the grant in order to teach and work with young people with higher needs, like SPED kids, students with higher needs, these grants are solely for, you want to teach teachers or train them to work with higher needs students?
Correct, pre-service teachers, correct.
Okay. Yeah, let me definitely look into some more. I thought it was to work with the children themselves on the ground. Yeah, let me look at links. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great, and we have another hand raised from Antoinette Ward. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute. So I'm going to send you an unmute request.
I think it was answered with that last question that was asked, because we are early head start, we are a nonprofit, but if we're training the teachers for that, then I don't think we qualify either. So that was what I needed the clarification on.
Your understanding is correct. This is for college or university programs that have that confer degrees in special education or related services.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Ashley Bott. How is early interventionist defined? Do general educators need to obtain a credential?
Early interventionists are defined as those professionals who work for Part C services, Part C IDA services, And they may work in early intervention programs, or they may work in sometimes Head Start or early Head Start programs in community-based settings too.
Great. We have another hand raised from Roberta Wiener. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute.
If our university received a 325T that was awarded in 2010, but the carryover money, the money came into the university, but the carryover money that went out went to 2018, would I be able to apply for the priority one?
Did you say 325T as in Tom?
Yes.
Yes, that doesn't apply. We're only looking at those who have had a 325K.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Our next question is from Kelly Kleinhorn. Please provide examples of data that fulfill the criteria for data showing state identified need.
We don't provide examples. That's actually something that we're not allowed to do. However, we do have a website that has previously funded grants on the site. Sunyoung, can you remember what that site is?
Yeah, I can. Let me try to find that here. I can put it in the chat box.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Nicole Pilling. Service obligation state scholars must spend 51% of time serving students with disabilities receiving services under IDEA. Does this have to be in an educational setting, or can it be in a clinical setting?
It can be in a clinical setting. However, I want to remind applicants that it has to be serving school age or early childhood. So adults would not qualify.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Phyllis Robertson. To clarify, is this only for pre-service? What about practicing SPED teachers seeking more specific training?
If they are earning a master's education specialist or clinical doctorate, that's up to the project. However, you have to be very careful, because you need to make sure that these individuals, so if you decide to do it as like a part-time program, that's totally up to the project. But as long as you can make it so that it's 2 programs, interdisciplinary, where both of them are receiving one of those, master's, educational specialist, or clinical doctorate.
I agree with Letitia's comment, and also, if some scholars want to develop skills in interdisciplinary competencies, and your project is providing that, I think that's acceptable. But those scholars who are already in service, they will also have to meet the service obligation requirements as well.
And the field and clinical experience.
Mm-hmm. I also wanted to let people know that I posted the link to the OSEP discretionary grant database link. So you can find the past funded 3 to 5K projects on that link.
Sonia, I think you sent it just to the panelists, so I actually copied it again and sent it to the whole audience. So you should be able to see it now.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, our next question is from Barbara Marinak. Can a scholar receive 2 credentials under the terms of the grant? For example, special education degree and a certificate in ABA.
Again, that's totally up to the project. As long as they're special education degree is at the master's, educational specialist, or clinical doctorate level. However, if I understand what the question is asking, if the person is receiving a master's in special ed and a certificate in ABA, that would not count as interdisciplinary. It would have to be a master's in special ed and a master's in ABA.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Benjamin Ryden. Can you elaborate on the service obligations for those scholars receiving support?
You can find more information on the link to service obligation that was included in the PowerPoint slides. But the service obligation is that we really expect that scholars who are funded by OSEP grants will go in the field and serve children with disabilities in school setting, educational and clinical and community settings. That's the expectation, at least for 2 years.
For each year of funding.
Yep, and I recopied the link in the chat as well. All right, our next question is from Christina Blazer. Can early intervention be considered birth to 5 or only birth to 3?
Early intervention is typically defined from birth through 3. 3 to 5, there is preschool special education. That's part of Part B, IDA services.
Great, thanks. Our next question is from Carolyn Fothery. Where would we find a list of allowable costs?
That should be included in the NIA. Let me quickly take a look at here. And I can post in the chat box.
Okay, great, thank you. Our next question is from Jennifer Perry. If preparing 2 or more related services, such as OT and PT, or O&M and OT, they will earn credentials in both. Will scholars meet their service payback by working full-time in one of the 2 fields? Or do they have to work full-time in both of the related service fields?
No, they can work in one of the 2.
Okay, great. Next question is from Maureen Russell. If we receive a grant for Focus A, can the scholars fulfill their service requirement with school-aged children or only with EI children?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Yeah, so Maureen Russell asks, if we receive a grant for Focus A, can the scholars fulfill their service requirement with school-age children or only with EI children?
So focus area A includes those who serve children ages 0 to 5. So it can be either early intervention and or preschool special education.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is from Elizabeth Talbot. For the significance section, we are asked to provide data on graduates of our programs, including data on learning and developmental outcomes of children they serve. Do school-level data associated with our grads' employment meet this criteria?
I'm sorry, can you read that one more time?
Sure. So Elizabeth Talbot asks, for the significance section, we are asked to provide data on graduates of our programs, including data on learning and developmental outcomes of children they serve. Do school level data associated with our grads' employment meet this criteria?
I don't think we have detailed guidelines what to include under that criteria, but I think that's good information to include. And if that can even support your, state or local needs, that could make it even stronger.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Jennifer Tarnay. So to clarify, essentially this is intended to be a dual master's degree program, is that correct?
I guess that's one way to look at it. Both programs will have to result in a master's degree, education specialist, or clinical doctorate. However, scholars from both programs do not need to receive 2 master's degrees.
Yeah, that's correct. I think rather than looking at it as dual masters, I think what's more accurate would be we really want to fund interdisciplinary programs. So, different disciplines coming together on the master's level, and they develop skills to be able to work in an interdisciplinary team settings. And I want to bring people's attention that in the chat box, Letitia was able to post a link to allowable cost.
Yep, that's in the chat. All right, and our next question is from Barbara Mack. So 2 master's degrees would count as interdisciplinary, and is an MAT in special education okay?
MAT in special education could come in with another discipline as an interdisciplinary.
Correct. So it would be an MAT and a related service.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Nicole Pilling. Can focus area B include preschool 3 to 5?
Preschool 3 to 5 is under focus area A, early childhood.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Kathy Randolph. If the credential offered in a master's is BCBA, does independent field work count as the clinical field experience?
I'm not sure what is meant by that question. Like, what is meant by independent field work?
Kathy, you can either put a clarification in the questions pane, or I can also ask you to unmute if you'd like to explain it out loud. Okay, so Kathy says field experience requirement for BCBA is 2,000 hours of experience. So I'm not sure if that helps kind of clarify the question a little bit.
And she's asking if that would
outside of the also added outside of the university setting. So the requirement for BCBA is 2,000 hours of experience outside of the university setting. So Kathy's asking if the credential offered in the master's is BCBA, does independent field work count as the clinical field experience?
I think it really depends on how your university defines clinical experience. I mean, if you want to include that BCBA required independent field work as part of clinical experience, that's fine.
Okay, yeah, Kathy says that answers the question, so thank you. Next question is from Hassan Huizinga. Can some of the scholars work towards a master's in special education while other scholars work towards a master's in psychology, both education centered?
Yes. That would be considered interdisciplinary. So your one area would be special education, and your other area would be school psychology.
Thank you. Next is from Pam Epler. For Group B, a graduate could have a master's in SPED and a related services in social work.
So again, let's say we're talking about one specific scholar. If the scholar is coming in to get a master's in special ed, that's the only thing they have to graduate with. However, going through the program, the master's in special ed and the master's in social work scholars should be working together in terms of having coordinated field experiences, shared coursework, and group assignments. But the two of them will graduate with two different degrees, one with the master's in social work and one with the master's in special ed.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from Rocio Rosales. Are you able to provide more information on the shared coursework requirement? In other words, are there a minimum number of courses that would need to be integrated into each program to meet this requirement?
Not provide guidance on how to provide integrated coursework. We leave that up to the project.
Correct. And we rely on our panel reviewers to evaluate the quality of the project when they look at the interdisciplinary program proposed.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any more questions in the questions box, and I don't see any hands raised. So is there anything else that you wanted to add, Patricia and Sanyang?
We have our email addresses on the screen, so please feel free to email us. Focus Area A is for, you can ask Focus Area A questions to me, and you can send Focus Area B and HBCUs and TCUs questions to Letitia. And thank you all for your interest in this grant competition, and we wish you best of the luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, you can find the recording of this webinar on the Ideas That Work website with all the links and other materials. Thank you.
And thank you, Swati.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.